The envelope was stark white, heavy, and carried the unmistakable seal of the Midland National Bank. Inside lay a single sheet of paper that would end 3 generations of sweat, sacrifice, and survival. Arthur stared at the foreclosure notice, his calloused thumbs tracing the cold, unforgiving black ink of defeat. For 80 years, the Pendelton family had bled into the dry, unforgiving dirt of this barren West Texas ranch. 3,000 acres of cracked earth, twisted mesquite trees, and endless dust. The bank appraiser had called it biologically dead, agriculturally useless, and entirely worthless. The massive debt was now insurmountable. Arthur walked out onto the wooden porch, the dry wind pulling at his frayed collar. He looked out over the desolate expanse, particularly the stark, white, salt-crusted basin that made up the northern boundary. Nothing grew there. Nothing ever had. It was a wasteland that broke his desperate spirit. But the mystery began 3 days before the final eviction deadline. A thick dust trail appeared on the horizon, signaling an unexpected visitor. It was not the local sheriff. Instead, a battered silver truck rattled into the driveway, carrying a man who introduced himself as Elias, a brilliant geological surveyor. Elias had been hired by a legal firm to do a final environmental audit, a standard formality before the bank liquidated the asset. But right from the start, Elias behaved strangely. He ignored the water wells, the dilapidated barns, and the rusty, broken irrigation equipment outside the crumbling farmhouse. Instead, Elias immediately turned his intense attention to the dead salt basin. Arthur watched from the porch as the surveyor spent hours walking the cracked white earth in the blistering heat. Elias carried specialized equipment, ground-penetrating radar, deep soil augers, and strange chemical testing kits inside black protective cases. By sunset, Elias was kneeling in the dirt, staring at a chunk of soil through a glass loop. Arthur walked down to the basin, intending to ask what was going on. Before he could speak, Elias hastily shoved the rocks into a canvas bag, his hands physically shaking with energy. "Is something wrong here?" Arthur asked, noting the frantic look in the eyes of the surveyor. Elias did not answer him immediately. He stared at Arthur, then looked back at the vast expanse of white dirt. "I must make a phone call now," Elias muttered, practically sprinting toward the truck. The buildup of tension over the next 48 hours was unbearable. The bank manager called Arthur, leaving a smug message reminding him to vacate the premises by Friday. But on Thursday morning, Elias returned, and he was not alone. 3 heavy drilling rigs crawled down the county road. Arthur blocked the gate with his truck, demanding immediate answers. The bank did not authorize this, he shouted over the roaring diesel engines. Elias jumped out of the lead rig, frantically waving a piece of paper. "The bank does not know about this yet, Arthur. Please trust me right now." Elias explained that he had paid for the drilling crew out of his own pocket. He begged Arthur to let them onto the salt basin. With nothing left to lose, and his curiosity burning hotter than the summer sun, Arthur moved his truck. The heavy machinery rolled onto the wasteland. For 10 agonizing hours, the massive drills pounded into the useless earth. They bypassed the topsoil, carving through layers of ancient bedrock. Arthur watched the pressure gauges spike. The drilling crew was silent, tense, communicating only with sharp hand signals. The dusty air smelled intensely metallic and very overwhelmingly sharp. As the sun dipped below the jagged horizon, painting the wide sky in violent shades of purple and red, the primary drills suddenly shuddered. A strange, high-pitched whining noise echoed across the valley. The lead driller killed the engine. The sudden silence was absolutely deafening. Elias ran swiftly forward. Elias cracked the cylindrical metal casing wide open. Inside was not dirt, nor oil, nor water. The material caught the fading light, shimmering with a bizarre, almost alien iridescence. Elias fell to his knees in the dust. He looked up at Arthur, holding an impossible billion-dollar secret right there. Elias raised his trembling hands to reveal a dense, sparkling core sample. It was not oil, gold, or silver. It was a massive, pristine vein of industrial-grade lithium and rare earth minerals, the exact elements needed to power the world's green energy future. The dead salt basin was a treasure trove. Arthur gasped, realizing the true magnitude of what lay beneath his boots. The property was not worth thousands of dollars. It was worth billions. But as Arthur felt a sudden surge of triumph, Elias leaned in closer, his face turning pale under the amber glow of the floodlights. "Arthur, you do not understand," Elias whispered, his voice trembling with genuine terror. "The bank did not call this land useless by mistake. They already knew what was down here. I found a hidden survey from 1950 in the state archives before I drove out here to Texas. The bank manager had deliberately manipulated the land appraisals for over 3 decades. They had intentionally denied the Pendelton family agricultural loans, engineered their deep debt, and pushed them toward foreclosure. The bank was holding back the truth until they could seize the deed for pennies on the dollar." Arthur felt a cold rage boil in his chest. His father had died stressing over this debt. His grandfather had broken his back working this earth, believing he had failed his family. It was not bad luck or barren soil, it was a ruthless, calculated corporate theft 70 years in the making. With only 12 hours left before the bank finalized the foreclosure, Arthur and Elias knew they could not win through standard court proceedings. The bank had armies of lawyers ready to bury them in legal paperwork until the land was officially transferred. They needed a far more lethal counterattack. Elias immediately called the chief executive officers of 3 major international technology companies. He bypassed the bank completely and offered the tech giants an exclusive direct lease on the rare mineral rights. By midnight, a bidding war erupted in the small, dust-covered living room of the Pendelton farmhouse. At 8 o'clock the next morning, the smug bank manager arrived at the ranch gate, accompanied by 2 sheriff deputies holding the eviction notice. The manager smiled warmly, stepping out of his air-conditioned luxury sedan, ready to finally take ownership of the billion-dollar dirt for the bank's hidden portfolio. Arthur walked down the driveway, completely calm, holding a single piece of paper. He did not yell. He did not plead. He simply handed the manager a wire transfer confirmation from the Federal Reserve Bank. The entire family debt was paid in full, with millions remaining in reserve. The manager's face paled as he stared at the receipt, his hands shaking as he realized their 70-year scheme had collapsed. Behind Arthur, heavy security vehicles from the Department of Energy pulled onto the property to secure the site. The bank had lost its prize forever to the rightful owner. That evening, the heavy dust settled over the quiet Texas basin. Elias packed his gear and shook Arthur's hand before driving away into the dusk. Arthur walked alone to the edge of the salt basin, kneeling where his grandfather used to pray for rain that never seemed to come. He dug his hands deep into the white, dusty soil, letting the coarse earth fall slowly through his fingers. He looked up at the vast, star-filled night sky, feeling the heavy burden of 3 generations finally lift from his shoulders into the cool, silent desert air. He smiled through his tears, knowing his family had finally won. "You didn't leave me a wasteland, Dad," Arthur whispered into the quiet wind. "You left me the whole world."